Thanks again for joining us today at stevedeace.com. You're watching our continuing video series, taking a look at what we think are the fatal flaws for each of the 9 most likely Republicans to be on the ballot come February the 6th in Iowa's first in the nation Iowa Caucuses. And the reason we're looking at their weaknesses, because often it's he who both covers and exploits the weaknesses and covers his own between now and Election Day that ends up winning the election themselves. So we're taking a look at each of these 9 candidates. We're doing so in alphabetical order. And today we're going to take a look at former Georgia Congressman and Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Now, Newt brings with him a lot of strengths, very high name ID, for example. His record in office, very conservative, one of the most conservative of any major party candidate for president in modern American political history. He articulates the viewpoint and the worldview that a lot of conservatives that dominate caucuses like the one here in Iowa want to hear, and he does it as well as just about any Republican alive. And he also is a person of intellectual depth. You know, he's something I've not really met a lot in politics. I've had a chance to interview a lot of people, and there's very few whose intellect I actually respect. That's not to say that I think they're all dumb. I mean, surely some of them are. But it means that I think a lot of politicians, in my experience, are rather reactionary. Meaning they're always reacting to what people like me say, people like you think, what the op-eds write, you know, talk radio, phone calls, emails, polling results. Very few actually contemplate, you know, if I do this, what are the next 3 or 4 steps that happen after I do this? Really deep thinkers. My experience interviewing Newt Gingrich several times, he's one of those kinds of people. And I think that will be very attractive to a lot of you on the campaign trail here in Iowa. But that does not mean that he's not without his fatal flaws. I mean, after all creation groans with sin. All of us have our own weaknesses that we need to mitigate and overcome, and Newt is no different. The problem with Newt is that his weaknesses, well, they're very personal. And those sometimes can be the hardest to overcome. Because while Newt Gingrich will do a phenomenal job articulating the moral viewpoint that many of you want to hear, and he'll be very eloquent and articulate talking about the role of God in the founding of this country and how that role should continue in our governance. The problem is that Newt in his personal life has at many times been anything other than godly. For example, he's on his, I think it's 3rd marriage. He's had a couple of different divorces. They've been messy. Of course, I don't know any divorces that are always squeaky clean. But you're talking about a man that is very compromised in his personal life. And when someone is compromised in their personal life, well, frankly, you have a hard time wondering if they're going to follow through with all that really tough talk that they say they're all about. Will they really be able to take the glare of the spotlight and stand up for the courage of their convictions when the media points its bony finger and tries to get them to sell out? You know, Harry Truman once said, he doesn't hire men that are divorced or cheat on their wives. And when asked why, he said, well, because if a man will lie to his wife, it's much easier for him to then lie to me. And you remember when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House and Bill Clinton was president, and all the scandals that Bill Clinton had, and all the talk that Republicans had back in the day of, well, character matters, character counts, the integrity of the President of the United States matters. Well, if it mattered in the 90s, it still matters today, and it's going to matter quite a bit, I believe, in Newt Gingrich's presidential campaign. And this is the kind of objective that can't be answered in a flood of television ads. It can only be answered in a lot of interpersonal communicating, eye to eye, looking Iowans in the eye, giving them a chance to see your real heart, where you're really at, and if you now are living a life of repentance or not. If Newt Gingrich can demonstrate that to Iowans, then of course they can overlook his flaws and see him as, therefore, by the grace of God go I, he's still a brilliant man, and maybe there's still something powerful that God can do in Newt Gingrich's life. But that is not an easy sell to make. But it's a sell that Newt Gingrich will have to make between now and February the 6th. And the only way he'll make it is if it's sincere. Thanks for joining us today at stevedeace.com. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook. Also, Steve_Deace on Twitter. Steve at stevedeace.com is our email address. God bless.